Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of the CNW Harvard subdivision in N scale. And obviously, you are not looking at the N scale version of the Metro, you're looking at the actual thing. And that's because I did some travel this summer, including a pretty long work trip to the Chicago area. And that gave me the chance to ride the real thing. Not on one of the UP lines, unfortunately, it was on the BNSF line, but still pretty cool nonetheless to get out to Union Station and see not only the Metro trains, obviously, but Amtrak as well. And it was cool, just gave me some more thoughts on how to approach modeling it on the Harvard sub. And although obviously there's some differences with how they run the Metro on the racetrack, there's still quite a bit that it was cool to see up close and in person, and not just in pictures and on YouTube, but to actually experience again for myself because it had been a while since I'd ridden the Metro. But also in DC, I had a chance to be in DC and take the Acela all the way up to Boston. And although that definitely does not have a super strong direct connection to the CNW, it does have a pretty good connection to this project because remember, the CNW is attempting to set up private higher speed and eventually high speed rail on its own line. So to be able to ride really the only high speed line that we have in the US, again, was really cool to help give some inspiration. So one of the neater parts about riding the Metro on the BNSF line was to be able to go through the Amtrak yard and to see all the new Siemens coaches. I was really kind of surprised by how many Siemens coaches are already delivered in the yard for use, obviously mostly on the Midwest regional routes. And although it's going to be a while before that impacts the the Harvard sub, because remember, chronologically, I'm operating in 2012, 10 years behind. Eventually, I'd have to imagine that the CNW would want to replace their initial stock of Ampletes and Horizons with the Siemens cars, just like Amtrak is in real life. But I'll keep rolling kind of this B-roll footage that I took interspersed with some of the clips of the actual layout. But let's go ahead and talk about the actual layout. So where we are, or where we left off, I should say, is I was working on getting the second domino built up, which would complete the other half of the Harvard interchange yard, along with the MR&T mainline intersection. And so I was able to get all those tracks down. I still need to do some slight tweaking on the yard tracks and making sure they're fully lined up with the other domino. But I was able to go through, get those down. I worked on wiring. I had to do quite a bit of feeders. I really wanted to overwire just because of all of the different switches, and also the interchanges produce some breaks in the current, and so I figured it'd be better safe than sorry, and to have those good and ready to go. And so then obviously I went through and tested to make sure that there was good current on each of the tracks, especially the mainline tracks, because I want those coming through at high speeds. A little less so on the MR&T, obviously, but still wanted to check all the tracks and make sure, especially going through the interchange, and then going through the yard tracks, that everything was good to go. Now after this, though, after testing for wiring to make sure it was good to go, I really set this part aside, and I really wanted to go back and focus on the scenery for the main 4x2 section that I've been working on, because I'd love to start to actually do some operations, and also take some pictures and do kind of more rail fanning videos. And that really, to me, that gets more meaning if you have some actual scenery and buildings and stuff. And so I set that other domino aside. I went back and I ballasted the main domino that I had been working on. Certainly have found my new least favorite part of the hobby, but I was overall pretty happy. Just took a lot of trial and error to get it right in terms of wetting it with the isopropyl alcohol and then doing the glue and all that stuff. But overall, I was pretty happy with that, and then I moved on to filling in the rest of the areas. And really, I think the main challenge just came from how it's a pretty track dense section that I'm working on. It's not a one track or two track main line, and then the rest of it's all scenery. It's 8-9 tracks that are getting ballasted in one 4x2 area. But overall, I was, like I said, I was pretty happy. I was pretty happy with how that all turned out, and then I started to try and work on filling in the rest of the scenery, because as a yard area, the ballast has kind of started to give way. There's more kind of dirt exposed, and so I put down put down dirt in between the gaps in the ballast, especially in the yard tracks. I tried to keep the main tracks more solidly, pink ballast, and then I put in just some small flock and things like that in between some of the tracks in the yard. And then I went to work on the front area. When I looked at the Google Earth images for Harvard, there were some pretty green spaces on the south side of where the tracks were, and so I really didn't want to do much beyond just laying down grass. Now, I'm not done with this. There's some more certainly I want to do. Walters is actually coming out with an N-scale version of one of their kind of shed utility area kits. It's going to go really, really well with one of the structures in the yard that Harvard has. You can see the structure in this picture. The other reason why I'm focusing on the front of the scenery and not the back yet. Notice I haven't done anything in the back, and you can see in this picture on the north side of the tracks and the other side of the tracks is a massive, massive old factory complex. It's called the Starline factory. Now it's been kind of parsed off and it's a bunch of independent shops and things like that, but as you can see, it's kind of a kit bashing dream because it's a very massive structure, but it also looks like several different structures kind of smashed and merged together. So I have some Walters kits on the way that I'm going to kind of kit bash and put together. I'm not trying to make it an exact replica of the Starline on this, because remember, this is kind of version, not even 1.0, kind of version 0.1, right? This is my practice version of the layout that I'm doing, and while we wait to move into a house that'll have a dedicated layout space. But I want to make it look relatively realistic, and so on that back side, where you still see the exposed foam and everything, that will be structures, and then I'll put structure flats behind the Starline to help add some depth to it. That's kind of the next big thing that I want to work on, but I felt like I did enough progress. I wanted to kind of stop and make sure that everything was looking all right and also working well. So I got the two dominoes out to get them all lined up and make sure that the tracks actually ran when they're put next to each other. And then I had a bit of a panic moment because then I turned the DCC on and it could not, the test locomotive was not running. Obviously now it's running, as you can see in this video clip, just fine. But I realized that I hadn't bothered to clean off the tops of the rails since I had done all the scenery, spraying the alcohol, spraying the glue, doing all that stuff. And so it is, I've heard the importance of cleaning your rails, but it was amazing to see the difference of electrical pickup between when I did and didn't clean the rails. Now you're going to see in this clip, though, that it is still going to struggle to pick up. That's because I didn't go through and clean the tops of the switches yet. And you can see that's where it struggles, is when it tries to go through the switches. The straightaway tracks, though, it ran just fine. But again, it really highlighted for me the importance of cleaning your track, not just after you do scenery, but just in general to keep the tops of those rails clean, because holy smokes, it wasn't like there was a ton of stuff that I cleaned up from it, but even just the stuff that I did, it was a night and day difference. I wish I had recorded what the locomotive was doing before I cleaned it, because I was worried that I had screwed something up epically. I was going to have to start from scratch on wiring, and then one quick cleaning, and as you can see, it was able to clean, go across no problem. Now the other exciting news is several more of my custom painted cars came in. You can see these are Rapido's Horizon cars, and they came in, and I did more of the traditional yellow on this. The Amfleets were the newer kind of Zito yellow, which is CNW's business train. Use that lighter, kind of more highlighter yellow. And I actually think it'll be kind of cool to have the two contrasting schemes. I'm going to stick with this more original yellow for sure, and then how I'll kind of write the history of it is they were experimenting with kind of a scheme 1 with the Amfleets, and then stuck with a more permanent scheme with the Horizon cars. And I think I'm going to order more Horizon cars going forward, just in part because it's easier to replicate the older Chicago Northwestern scheme with the shape of the Amfleets and the fact that it's the fluted sides. You can't really do the lettering that you see up here. You can't really replicate the old 400 era coaches like you can with this. And so I was super happy with how this turned out. I tried out a new guy this time to do this. Mark I think Gaeth is how you say his last name, Gaeth, but he does custom N scale, and he was awesome. Provided a lot of feedback along the way, and very patient, because obviously one of the challenges with these is, these don't exist, right? There aren't CNW Horizon cars that he can pull up on photos and look. There's a measure of work that he has to do, and if you can see in the background, the locomotive behind the Horizon cars is the other custom work that I got back, and I made this a thumbnail for the video. I'll get some better pictures and video next time. But I also had a custom SD70 ACE painted up in the lightning bolt scheme, and I'm really happy with it. The only thing I think I'll do differently next time is I'll work with Mark and use some of the larger numbering on the sides for the locomotive, but that was my call, and that was just a mistake on my part. It wasn't anything he did wrong, but I was very happy with how that turned out as well. And so, I decided to, with the two dominoes lashed up, I decided to kind of give myself a chance to see what it would like to run the the new 400 through the scene, and obviously you're only going to see it for a couple seconds here because there's not a whole lot of track to run the P42 and the coaches at high speed, but you'll get to see it here as it zips through towards the end of the scene. You'll see it real fast come through, and you can see the contrasting yellows between the P42 and the Horizon coaches, and so I'm going to get another P42 custom painted up in that darker, more original yellow as well. But again, that's the progress I was able to do this summer. Not a whole lot, but overall I'm happy with it. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the track down for the next domino to the right, because I want to be able to, again, start to do more operations, run more videos where I'm not having to slam the stop button after only 4 feet of running. And so that's my next step, is to get that track laid, just to continue to test and make sure that it functions as I add more pieces in. And then obviously continue the scenery in the back. Again, you can see that behind the Dash 9 that's doing the test run, it's pretty much just cork and blue foam. And so I want to be able to get the structures built, put them in there, and notice you can see the big open dirt patch right here where the camera is. That's where I'm going to put the Walther structure that I mentioned, and I'm going to do probably gravel to do the road leading up to it, not paved concrete like in the actual Harvard yard. But those are my next steps, and again, I'm pretty happy with the progress. I'll get the switches cleaned so that way next time you're not seeing me have to nudge the locomotive. But that's basically what I was able to accomplish this summer. So thanks again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll get another video up soon.